So welcome back to the Creating Synergy podcast. Today we have a wonderful human being on the show, Mr. Grant Wilckens. Welcome.
Thank you, Dan.
So Grant, you are the founder and CEO of the G'day Group, Australia's largest regional accommodation provider with more than 300 odd properties around Australia, including iconic destinations such as Cradle Mountain, Rottnest Island and the world famous El Questro in the Kimberley. Well done and kudos on everything that you guys have done to date.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's sort of it's been a wild journey, but a really good fun one, I can tell you.
Now, I've been gunning to get you on the show for quite some time, so I'm very excited that you're here. I'd like to start off, and this is typically where I start off most podcasts, is to just, who is Grant and what do we need to understand about your earliest context to understand the human being that's sitting in front of us today?
It's a good question. So, look, at the end of the day, I'm sort of born and bred in the Adelaide Hills, so I'm probably pretty grassroots.
Yep.
What you see is what you get. I've sort of had a professional career in terms of chartered accounting and other things. I'm sort of, I'm very much outdoors and want to be practical. And we'll probably talk about some of my other history, but coming from the Adelaide Hills, it's always been something that's very down to earth and I guess now I'm in holiday parks, which what a more of a down-to-earth place can you want to be?
Absolutely. Do you have a core purpose in your life that you're living out today?
I don't think I've got a core purpose, but I do think a lot about my family and making sure that I'm always there for my family, whether it be sport or financial support. There for my parents. I mean, they obviously raised me and what I think did a reasonable job. So, at the end of the day, it's really my purpose is probably just to, make sure I leave a legacy of being true to who I am and supporting my family and my friends. But obviously, I'm really proud of the business that I've grown over the last 20 years.
So, I'm keen to talk about your parents and understand because they obviously have influenced who Grant is today. I understand that your father had run a construction business back in the day, which is interesting because they say if your parents are an entrepreneur or run their own business, you're 60% more likely to start your own, which is naturally what's happened with you. So just want to learn a little bit more about your parents and your dad and the business and how that shaped who you are.
Yeah. My father was a builder. He's now retired, but my grandfather was also a builder. So we've all had sort of construction, even with holiday parks. We're still building parks and developing parks. But Dad came from a family that his father's business was a company called Wilckens and Burnside, quite a well-known builder in his time. In fact, the Aqaba Hotel my grandfather built, and so my father was always in the practical sense, but he didn't want to go into his father's business. He wanted to create his own construction business, and so he started building swimming pools. So he knew a lot about concrete. Ultimately, swimming pools became high-rise buildings within Adelaide, but he knew a lot about precast concrete and how to actually make buildings stand up. Saturday mornings for me was about getting out on site. When I was a kid, just remember getting out and meeting the workers, the tradies.
Doing all the hard labour, free hard labour.
Free hard labour. But it was great for me to go and experience, what it was like to run a business. I used to open cheques. We'd go past the post office in the morning and we'd run out and get the mail from the post office. And, Dad would say, well, let's open the cheques. And so that taught me a lot about, the value of money. And obviously everything back then was a cheque. Yeah,
absolutely. I have a similar background. My old man had a construction business, although a lot smaller, but every weekend and not weekends, I was playing sport more, but during school holidays, I was there stacking bricks around the site and from measly $10 to $20 or something like that back in the day.
Yeah, cheap labour.
Did you enjoy the business aspect? Like you said, you were looking at the checks and everything. Did you enjoy the business aspect early on?
I did. I think, I guess that it did instill strong values about hard work, and Dad was a hard-working person, and as I said, it was definitely a 6-day-a-weeker, and there was definitely early mornings and late nights, and from his perspective. But it was great for me to actually just learn about what it was like to employ people and the reliance that they had on him in terms of as somebody who was putting food on their table from having a job, and you see the size of the importance of what that is to those individuals. And so that was probably, for me, it was eventually I was always going to, in my mind, I was always going to have my own business. I was always going to be a self-employed person, and now it's a much larger organisation in Discovery and where I am. But at the end of the day, it was all about having your own destiny, controlling your own destiny.
Do you think that everyone is made for that, though? Like, I think, there's these common thoughts around, find what you love and pursue that career. But do you think everyone's got it in them to take on business themselves?
Probably not. And I think, it's hard work. I mean, people say
it's painful.
Yeah, well, the luckier you get, the harder you work, the luckier you get. Well, it doesn't always come easy. Yeah. And, I think for me, I was pretty determined as a younger person, and I knew I wanted to be successful, and I knew I wanted to sort of, work hard and win. And, obviously, thankfully I got there. But I look at my kids and I can certainly see it in my kids as well, that they, Seb, for example, my son, he always says, I don't want to go into the business, Dad. I'm going to create my own thing. He wants to create his own world and his own business, but it's always, he's very much focused on his, making sure he's going to be sort of creating his own business. Not necessarily, he will go obviously start being employed by somebody, but ultimately I can see him being a self-employed person.
Absolutely. It's funny because your grandfather had his own business, your father started his own, then you started your own, and now Seb's saying that he'll start his own. It seems like a theme in the family, and all relatively very successful by the sounds of things, so which is great. So good luck, Seb, and on all your path. So you've got a daughter as well.
Yeah, I've got a daughter, Sienna. So I mean, I don't know. She's thinking about medical. So my view. I mean, I knew it wasn't medical.
Yeah.
From my mind, it was always going to be a business type role. But she's sort of bubbling around thinking that she might go into a medical world, but she's only 15. She's in year 10.
Yep.
So who knows where she's going to end up? But Seb's in year 12. Yep. So he's in the crunch time for him.
He's on the brink of it. You said that you knew you were always going to be successful. Why? Like, where does that come from? What drives that thought process?
Well, as I think I think the fear of failure is a really powerful item, and I'm not suggesting that I want to. But once you start something, for me it was about, I knew I was going to be successful because I knew I was going to work hard. Whether it was going to be a success was unknown.
Yeah.
But once you start something, you've got to make sure it doesn't. Well, in my mind, you've got to make sure you continue to work at it, and we'll talk about it today. But Discovery, we're a big business now, but every big business starts off a small business, and when you're a small business, things can go wrong, and it does boil down to that grit and determination, which actually can get you out of holes and get you out of problems. And that is who I am. I'm a pretty resilient, determined person that really wants to. I wanted to make sure this business was a really successful one.
Yeah.
And I think it's just part of who people are. You've either got it or you haven't.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it can be taught to you. I think it's something that you've either got or you haven't.
Yeah. It's just why I asked that question around your early days and earliest contexts, is generally how you're shaped is your level of grit and resilience. I guess the thing for me is you mentioned the fear of failure there for a second, and I think we spoke about this last time when we caught up. Is there's sort of the fear of failure on a macro level, and then the fear of failure on a micro level. No doubt that it's this grit and resilience that you're not fearing what's in front of you right now and how to sort of push your way through it, but it's the overall failure that's sort of keeping you driven there, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's look, I've spoken to my chairman about this as well, and my chairman now runs he started his own fund, and he's now got a very successful fund in Sydney, private equity fund in Sydney, and we've spoken about why we're here, why has his business been so successful, and why has Discovery and G'day been so successful? And I think you obviously got a real desire to win, but you've also got a real desire not to stuff things up. And for me, I worked hard. I was never an A grade. I did get A's, but I wasn't a straight A student.
Yeah.
I was never going to get into medicine. I did align myself with a lot of people at school that actually got into medicine, so they did drag me up in my results. But it was never a career choice that I ever chose.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was about getting a business degree, and then I became a chartered accountant at KPMG, and then sort of went into investment banking. But for me, it was like my career was important. My drive to wanting to be successful was important, and then it was sort of okay. Well, when I made the decision to go and buy a caravan park, which is very, very different from that corporate experience I've just described.
Yep.
I just didn't want to muck that step up. And it was quite a bold step to go and buy something which, holiday parks, property, they were very tired. We'll talk about the business.
Besser block.
Blocks, and not really something that is a corporate finance.
It's not a sexy.
No, it's not that sexy, and I was working in investment banks and earning good bonuses. And, it was a very different world. And I think to make that step, it was right, as my brand Grant, I really wanted to make sure Discovery was successful because, and we were almost, we'll talk about it, I was in the bad bank and we were almost collapsed a few times. But, it was that fear of actually, it wasn't just letting down shareholders and letting down banks because I had a lot of debt at that phase.
Yep.
It was also about, brand Grant, what does that mean for my profile and my career, because I'd given up an investment banking career in order to take up a caravan park career, which is quite different.
100%.
And sort of what does that mean?
You mentioned, before we get into your career, I want to just park that for one moment and spend a little bit more time on family, because you mentioned earlier, a couple of minutes ago, that family and friends are what drive you. What does Till Flat mean to you? And can you explain that for us? Yeah,
sure. Well, Till Flat is my happy place. So Till Flat is a place where I can be exactly who I am. And so I probably do live quite separate lives. My professional life is my professional life, and my private life in terms of getting away and being in tracksuit pants and Ugg boots and
beanies and
daggy clothes is, as I said, I'm a pretty practical, down-to-earth person. And so my history has been, as I said, Adelaide Hills, camping, caravanning, and Till Flat was a property that my parents bought and initially developed back in 1988. So I was born in 74, so I was 14 years old when when my parents bought the property, and it's really been a massive part of my whole life. We now own it. My wife and I now own the property, and my kids are now living the life that I lived. The freedom of having canoes and motorbike riding and all that fun stuff that you do when you're actually in an environment which is it's not built up cities and pretentious. It is grassroots, and so that is actually who I am. And so even though I sit on boards and we've got a big organisation, I've got governance and shareholders and all that's that which is my Adelaide or Sydney or Australian business life.
Yeah.
Who I really am is really that grassroots, sitting by the river, skiing with the kids, enjoying beautiful sunsets and red cliffs, and that's what Till Flat is to me. It's that place where I can get away, and it's where I switch off. Even just mowing lawns. The simple things like mowing lawns.
Nothing
allows you to
nothing better than the smell
switch
of
off
freshly cut.
Grass, absolutely. So Till Flat for me is I'll never. It'll never. While I'm alive, I'll never sell it. And I hope my kids will never sell it. It's just a very, very special place.
The life of an entrepreneur and a business owner and a CEO is one that is difficult, and one that there's a lot of sacrifice that needs to be made. How have you gone about sort of trying to realise your visions for what the day group could be, whilst managing and maintaining and cultivating those loving and thriving relationships with your family?
Yeah, look, it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy at all, and it does boil down to working hard at your relationships as well as working hard at the business. It probably means there probably has been sacrifices even on the social front. I'm like, I've still got great friends from school and great mates that I still hang out with, but and great colleagues that I've met through work. But I'm not the most. I'm not out and about every single day, and life's busy, and so when you're running and starting an organisation like Discovery and G'day, and you're running, and you've got a family. I mean, my kids are now growing up at 17 and 15, but Discovery's 20.
Yeah.
So when you sort of think about that, my kids were babies when I started the business. Sorry, I started the business. Then 2 years later, Seb was born, and then 4 years later, Sienna was born, and then at that same time, I was put into the bad bank and had to trade myself out of a very challenging period. So, you put all of that into the mix, and with a new wife, I got married in 2004, so that was marriages and the challenge, the work you've got to put into marriage. All of it is a lot of work, but incredibly rewarding. And now I look back and business has been successful, my marriage is successful, my kids, amazing relationship with my kids, and I do sport with them and make sure I'm there for those special occasions. I may be away a lot because I do travel a lot. But it's making sure I'm home for the sporting events, the sports days. I mean, they're no longer doing sports days because they're both older. But whether it's be Friday night footy like I am tonight, I'm boundary umpiring tonight for Friday night footy.
I'm the team manager of basketball every Friday night.
Yeah. But you just got to making sure you're part of that.
Absolutely. If I was to ask your family, would they say, Dad, or my husband's got it right?
I think so. I think they'd say I'm incredibly hardworking, and I'm. Or probably they wish I'd slow down a little bit. But I think that they I don't think they'd say that I don't contribute to the family life or the or enough around home, or don't come to, I do travel a lot and I do work hard, but I think I'm still present. And to be present is really important. So even if you have got something happening at work, at least if I can come home and have dinner and then go and do work, after dinner, at least I'm present for dinner, and I'm not sort of on my phone or on my iPad or whatever trying to work out what's going on at work. I'm trying to be focused on what's happening with the family.
I love it. Did your dad have the same thought process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dad was always. I mean, the construction industry, he was home earlier. I mean, I think because they start earlier. I mean, at the end of the day, my dad was he was always gone by 7 a.m. at least, and if not earlier, and he was coming home at 5:36 because building sites just close earlier. So probably had more of a after school time with my dad, but he worked. I mean, both my mum and my dad worked very hard at the family. The family unit was everything, and I think that's really important. The family unit to me is everything as well. So it is about the prioritisation of. I'd rather my kids entertain at Till Flat with their friends as opposed to, I mean, obviously they go to their other friends. But I'd rather have more friends stay with us and create that unit of this is where, you can, this is your happy place as well. And they love it as well. So I think it has worn off.
Brilliant. It's really actually nice to hear that family is your core value. And it is the same as mine, which is why I try to spend some time on it, because you're right, it is a balancing act. And it's tough, but I guess I don't want to be the entrepreneur, or the CEO, or the business owner, or whatever that looks back and goes, I should have done more with my family. I missed out on that time. So it's like, okay, having that consciously in my mind now, how do I address that? So where to from here? So you're born, you grew up in the Adelaide Hills, and then you ventured down to the big smoke in Adelaide.
Absolutely, yeah. Hardly ever came down the hill. Not some at primary school.
So what does it look like? Where does your life take you from there, from high school into university to overseas?
Yeah. So look, as I said, I was not some at primary school, which I think we had 70 students or 80 students between reception and year 7. So. It was a very small school, and so that was my primary school. And then, so that's the grassroots. Then I came down to Pembroke obviously down the hill, and that was, I didn't actually come down the hill a lot prior to that because I lived and went to school in the hills. So, and that was probably a bit of an eye opener for me because it was private school and it was a bit different. It was like it was almost like the public school guy coming to a private school. Really loved the fact that I did go to a public school though, like my kids did the same thing now at Pembroke as well. But I think making sure that the kids know that not everybody has that opportunity to go to a private school is really important. So that's important. It was a good phase for me, and then did work hard and got reasonable results. I was never a straight A student. I had A's in my portfolio, but never a straight A student. And so I was probably average. And I think when I look at the focus that these kids are now under to get results, and you look at the average is actually fine. Average is good, right? You don't have. For me, I was always wanting to be successful, but I think the pressure that some of these kids go through is quite challenging. Anyway, having said all that,
you're right though. I heard there was a psychologist coming out, some of the top psychologists in the world, looking at children and their growth and their development. and these top 3 psychologists would spend more time studying and analysing the parents as opposed to the child.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why I ask and start with the early context, because understanding that is understanding who that person's going to be.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I think people still can work hard and have that, because it was interesting, because I don't think I pushed Seb that hard, but he's really focused on doing well at year 12.
Yeah.
But it's actually because he just wants to do something better in his life. And he's never going to be a brain surgeon either, right? I mean, it's not who we are. We're intelligent people, but we're not, my wife's a physio, I'm a chartered accountant by trade, so we're smart people, but we're not brain surgeons.
Yeah.
And so I think being average is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And so it's about what you do with that.
Correct.
And so I think that's really where what I took out of Pembroke was I did it right, and then I really just had no idea what I wanted to do still. And it was about finding a sort of a business degree, and obviously did a commerce degree at Uni of Adelaide, and then got a job at KPMG, and then lo and behold, became a chartered accountant. God, I never want to be an accountant, but it was good training for me.
Yeah.
I learned a lot, and that gave me the sort of that having that on my resume, to be honest with you, was what helped me get a job in London working for an investment bank.
Yeah.
And that's where probably my time at Rothschild in London probably gave me. I was there for 4.5 years. I probably did 9 or 10 years of work in 4.5 years, because you work 2 days every day.
Yeah, 16 hours a day,
Yeah, work really, really hard, but learnt a lot.
Like what? Because Rothschild, I mean, you only need to, this is like a $1 trillion family, right? What did you learn?
Oh, look, I think, I learned a lot about how the investment banking or corporate advisory, right? We're effectively a corporate finance advisory business, so we used to acquire and advise companies on acquisitions, divestments, even just boards around how, strategy. So at the end of the day, it was a pretty broad role. I was in a transport and infrastructure team, so I was a global group, so a global team.
Yep.
So I was lucky enough to go and I was involved in the privatisation of the Hong Kong Metro, the MTRC, Frankfurt Airport. There's a lot of global deals in there, as well as the national rail owner in England as well, Railtrack. So that sort of gave me global perspective and really what's involved in terms of deep knowledge of financial modelling. I mean, at the end of the day, I was left KPMG, knew a little bit about, I was a chartered accountant, so I knew about accounting, but not necessarily around true corporate finance and how things impact through an M&A process or even how to do a deal, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I probably learned how to do a deal. That's probably the other aspect of it is,
Gave you a more rounded education.
And gave me probably the M&A piece, which is
essentially what you do.
Effectively what the success of, we've been very successful at Discovery and G'day is because, the core part of how we've done it is acquiring and developing our properties, as well as the customer experience piece, which we'll talk through. So,
is there anything that sticks out? I'm just interested in the Rothschild story and their whole. I mean, you hear so many things on YouTube and whatever these days that talk about how they control the world, essentially. I'm more interested in the business in itself. Was there anything that you remember and took away from that you've kind of introduced into the G'day Group?
Yeah, I mean, so Rothschilds is still a family business. So that's what you've got to realise. It's the 5 Arrows, and the 5 Arrows were 5 brothers that separated themselves across all different parts of Europe, and they became traders of clothing, and so they were literally trading between themselves in different parts of Europe and built up the Rothschilds family. So again, the legacy of the family and the importance of the family was very paramount. And so that's, if I think about Rothschild, they're not a cutthroat, hardcore US investment bank. They're still a very, very good investment bank, but family values were pretty important, and getting champagne and turkey at Christmas time, things like that. Even though we're part of, if it was a very big bank, yes, there'd be bonuses, but there'd be literally a turkey and a bowl of beautiful Rothschild champagne every single Christmas, and that sort of really teach you, no matter how big you are and no matter how important you are as a bank, as a family of the Rothschilds, they always employ, they always sort of even though I was a young banker at that, they always sort of brought it back to making sure they looked after us as an employee, or as the people that were actually turning the cogs and paying them big dividends.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was hard work and it was great. I wouldn't trade my time. In fact, it's probably the most important job project discovery or g'day that I've ever had. That experience was really, really powerful and really, really important to who I am, I think.
What made you move back? What was the draw back to Australia? And again, you moved from Adelaide to London in its own right, and I understand you knocked on doors to get that job at Rothschild, to then saying, right, I'm picking up, I'm going back.
Yeah, so look, I met my girlfriend.
Yeah,
and she's now my wife. Okay. So
we haven't mentioned her name.
No, so Adele is my wife, and so she's a South African born. So we obviously met in London, and she's, as I said, a physiotherapist, and she and I became. We actually started off as flatmates. Can you believe?
There you go.
So platonic flatmates.
Yeah.
We were flatmates for over a year, not as girlfriends and boyfriends.
Yeah.
And we just sort of gradually got to know each other as flatmates, as in one of those big London shared houses.
And it's lasted 20 odd years now.
Longer than that, so 25 probably.
25.
But, yeah, and look, she had enough of the cold winters and living in London. And to be honest, it was a pretty big debate at the time. I wanted to stay.
Yep.
And
to stay in your role?
Yeah, I wanted to stay in my role. And Rothschild's was great. It was a great place. I was making, I was established.
Yep.
It was hard to get established, as you said. It was. I walked the streets with my suit trying to get a job to get there, and then I'd got there, and then I was a key part of the Rothschilds team, and so it was I was doing global deals. It was a great part of my life, and so my wife sort of approached me. My girlfriend at that stage, Adele, approached me, and she said, "Oh look, I want to go. I can't do another winter. I'm going to go back to Australia." And I said, well...
Had she lived in Australia before?
Yeah, she had lived in Australia, so she'd emigrated over to Perth. Her parents had moved to Perth. And I said, well, and I said, well, how about we do one more? So we did another 6 months, and then actually we did a 6-month trip down through Africa. So she's South African, and we did, so you talk about camping. We went camping down through Africa. So I had a backpack with a tent, a trangia, and we literally did independent travel the whole way down through Africa, from Cairo all the way down to Cape Town.
Amazing.
And so, and not many people have done that.
No.
It's in public transport and no tour guide. Malawi, Zim in Mozambique. Rwanda, Uganda. Amazing places through Africa. The places people wouldn't go to. Machine guns and probably in hindsight, quite high risk.
Yeah.
But incredible experience.
Would you let your kids do that now?
I don't know. Probably not. I'd be pretty scared if they did that.
I know.
It
is a scary thought.
Yeah, came back in one piece though.
Yeah.
So and then back to Australia, and didn't come straight back to Adelaide though. I went into Sydney, and I just wanted to find my feet again. I knew my next step was I was working towards my future of actually having my own business. No idea what that business was, but that was my future step, was about how do I get my own business and create something myself. But I needed to reestablish networks, being out of Australia for a while, not having lived in anywhere other than Adelaide in Australia. So I came back, we went to Sydney, and I got a job with a guy called Robert White, who was a very wealthy guy in Sydney when the late Kerry Packer was alive. Good mates with Kerry Packer. So Robert's a multi-billionaire, and we used to buy buildings. We used to buy, say, 3 buildings, and then we'd put them together into a fund. He'd buy them on his balance sheet, and then we'd sell them down through the financial planning network. So we'd do a PDS, a product disclosure statement, and we'd do all the returns through the product disclosure statement, and we'd sell effectively to self-managed superannuation funds through the financial planning network.
Okay.
So that's what we did, and I did quite a few of these funds.
Learn a little bit more about property.
Learn a lot, and that was property, and that sort of got me the exposure. Because I was in transport, I knew a lot about track access charges, so I knew about landing charges, I knew about long-term cash flows. So property's got long-term cash flows, but my time at Rothschild taught me about financing, debt financing and modelling and long-term cash flows and securitisation effectively. And so coming back to Australia and getting into the property space, it was getting into this business, this Robert White's business, it taught me a lot about different types. It was about property. It sort of changed rate per square metre, but it was about rent, and it was about, cap rates and buying a property on a cap rate. What's the value of that? Which obviously, I knew about, but it was sort of gave me familiarisation with that sector.
Absolutely.
So,
and during that time, you stumbled upon a couple of parks that sparked your interest.
Yeah. So during that time, I stumbled across a portfolio of 5 parks in Victoria, and at the same time, I met a colleague or an ex-person that I knew back here in Adelaide, who was much older than me, a guy called Roger Sexton, and I went to school with Stephen Gerlach's son, Andrew Gerlach, and so Stephen Gerlach and Roger had found a portfolio of 3 parks in WA, and I found a portfolio of 5 parks in Victoria. And when we sort of had dinner with Roger in Circular Quay, and we said, well, why don't we try and put together a fund and buy holiday parks. I did talk to Robert about it, Robert White, but Robert wasn't interested in dirty caravan parks.
Yeah.
He liked
the big buildings.
He liked big buildings.
Yeah, glamorous stuff.
Yeah, he liked the glamorous stuff, and
What drew you to the parks? What was it about that industry? I don't know. Yeah, where was the idea born and sparked from?
Yeah, look,
or was it just opportunistic?
It was a property play, to be honest with you, and so we looked at surf lifesaving clubs, we looked at like lawn bowls, and then we looked at caravan parks. And obviously this caravan park business portfolio had also come to me, so there was that familiarisation of the park piece. But bowling greens was obviously challenging, and you think about where bowling greens are located, and in fact a lot of bowling greens have now been, they've now become retirement villages and other things that have been built on those bowling greens, but they're prime land in residential places. Obviously, surf lifesaving clubs are on beaches, but again, challenging.
Can't own the beach.
Yeah, challenging because you can't own them, and they're owned by councils. And,
And
then you've got caravan parks, which are once again on the beach or on rivers, and they're beautiful places. And lo and behold, they were owned by, owned by Australian mums and dads in small business, and so it was really about a property play about how do you corporatise an industry, because it had never been done before.
Yeah.
So nobody had ever done a roll-up of caravan parks back in 2004.
Saw the opportunity
to sort of look at acquiring, a portfolio of parks. The goal was always to probably, the ambition at that stage was to acquire a portfolio of parks and probably list it. And we never got there, and we're not there, and I'm glad we didn't go there, to be honest with you.
Keep your family.
Well, now it's private business, very different. But
is it like the McDonald's model where you buy?
I wish it was, because it would be much easier, because it's every park, every McDonald's is the same, right?
Yeah.
So the challenge or the beautiful part about holiday parks is every park's different.
Yeah, I mean more in context. It's more about the property value. McDonald's would say that they're a property business more so than a burgers business in the sense of how they make money. Yeah,
look, we've been very successful out of our property.
Yeah.
And I think we had to pivot during the global financial crisis. So I'll just give you a bit of a background as to before we get to the GFC. So, we grew very rapidly. So we put together these 5 parks and 3 parks, 8 parks to start off with, and we grew rapidly. And we actually did 40 parks in 36 months.
Was there a reason for that?
Probably had, if I'm honest, probably lacked experience and had too much. I had a lot of capital, so we raised $50 million of debt, $40 million worth of equity. We had the management company ourselves, myself and the 2 partners I mentioned previously, and so we raised a lot of capital, and we probably didn't have enough discipline, I don't think, in those early days. We bought a lot of green grass. We bought a lot of really beautiful property with not strong cash flows. At the end of the day, you've got to service debt. You've got the valuation was there in terms of the independent valuation of the parks was there, but there just wasn't enough cash flow.
The infrastructure wasn't on it for a year.
We had to change ourselves into a customer business.
Yeah.
We went from a property business, but so the core of our initial phase was very property focused, and it was a roll up and really an arbitrage of how do you take some of the parts, the overall value of the entire business being greater than the individual properties as a standalone. And as I said, that all went pretty well, although my partners and I separated ways in 2007.
So just before the
Before the GFC. So unfortunately, so we owned the management company. I was the junior guy. So I was 30 when we started the business. So I was quite young, probably at the time. About turned 50. There you go. And it wasn't really that. It was during that initial phase that my partners, the shareholders, weren't happy with probably my CEO and my chairman at that time.
Yep.
And they stepped in and unfortunately removed the CEO. I was the CFO at that stage. And, as a result of that, and then GFC hit. And that was so it was all, we had shareholder litigation because there was litigation that flowed after that. We were in the bad bank, so Lehman Brothers collapsed, valuations collapsed. I got moved into the bad bank. I had to shrink my head office massively because I had to save costs. I then worked through selling 9 parks, went from 40 parks down to 31 parks. I repaid a heap of debt.
Essentially working for the banks.
Essentially working for banks. I did. My head changed, and to be honest with you, the banks could have appointed an administrator through that phase. They recognised that I was the guy to. I was
You're as good as any administrator.
Well, I was more passionate. I had more skin in the game.
Yeah.
I had a massive mortgage, in terms of, if everything went belly up, it was financially going to be a very, very painful situation for me. So I managed to sort of keep it all together, and I delivered. I mean, at the end of the day, I did work for the banks. I was in the bad bank, but I was actually, equity. I was still equity. I was still an equity holder and an equity provider or owner, but at the end of the day, in that phase, and it's really interesting when you go through that shift, my brain actually went to the debt, and because you're trying to keep debt every cent in the dollar, you're trying to keep the debt full. So we had a couple of $100 million worth of debt.
I mean, I knew that. Like I knew you told me this previously that
it's
you
a lot of money.
That's incomprehensible without a doubt. There's. I've got a little bit of debt with the DATO here and there and everywhere, but when you talk 200 million,
to be honest with you, it was too loose. If you ask with the mistake, we had too much debt and it was too easy to get, and so equity was precious. So we had a very thin slither of equity, and we were growing through and probably irresponsible looking back, but that was pre-GFC before anything goes wrong.
Yeah.
And you sort of think nothing's going to go wrong.
Yeah, we're
and so
we're titanium.
and you want to hold on to the equity. So had too much debt and all the equity and a lot of pain basically. So
this is a pretty deep, dark time.
Absolutely.
Right. Like this. Let's not just gloss over this. This is something that
absolutely.
I can only think that it would have had a major impact on you, your health, your relationships. If my understanding is correct, you're 4 years into a marriage. Seb's 2 years old or thereabouts at this time.
Yep, Sienna's getting born.
How does one navigate through this concoction?
Yeah, it was pretty soul searching, and I did have some really strong people outside of the business that I could talk to. I in fact, one of my Rothschild's friends, who's still a great mate, a guy called Marcus Wyborn. So Marcus, if you're listening, thank you. But and he's now gone and he's done an incredible job in his own business. But I really relied on people to help me through it because it was political. As I said, there was shareholder litigation, there was bank challenges, there was a young family. It was. I felt like I was on a treadmill, and the treadmill was going faster and faster and faster, and it couldn't get off. If I got off, obviously the business would have collapsed because everybody was relying on me. And but the other part of it, obviously I would have been a financial failure, and I would have. The other thing was my career. I mean, at the end of the day, I'd gone from an investment banking career to trying to do make holiday parks what they are today, which is the great part of the story. But this early part of our life, or the discovery of the G'day life, was really, really hard. So grit, determination, all those sort of things came in it. But it was pretty dark. There was lots of sad.
Yeah, what do you remember? What do you remember about that time? I
remember walking around my backyard a lot on the phone, to be honest, because that's where, even though work happened, it was a 24/7 type. When you're in that world, it's your weekend. It just probably consumed my life for 2 years. And I honestly, we've moved houses, but we had a little kids play set, and I just remember being out there a lot on the phone, with various stakeholders, including accountants and banks and board members, and just trying to work through different issues, whether it be selling parks, whether it be. So to me, it was a very intense moment. I didn't really have a social life through there. It was I probably wasn't a very fun person to be around, and it was hard. The marriage it was everything was hard. We had young kids. Adele was raising the kids on her own because I wasn't really around a lot. Even though I've just talked about how much I worked in the family, it was hard. It was pretty hard.
And mentally, you're not there either, right?
No,
I've been we've all been there. We talk about dark times though. Did you see
healthy body, healthy mind? Though there you go. That is a motto that I've always lived by. Yeah. And even though it was dark, I've always been somebody who's got out and run, and so then that's probably been the biggest issue that's got me through is probably exercise.
Yeah, because it's your escape.
Absolutely.
It's almost like a meditation in a way. Yeah. I run a lot, and running for me is that. Yeah. It's just this get out in nature, get out of the concrete buildings.
Absolutely.
Was there a light though? Could you see a light? Was there a glimmer? You talk about grit, resilience, but could you see the path to getting out?
Yeah. My current chairman became my chairman back then. He left the business for about 5 or so years in the middle, but in 2008 he became my chairman.
What's his name?
Adrian Loader, and Adrian was a massive. We did it together. At the end of the day, I don't sit here and say it's all me.
No, it never is. It's always about a team.
At the end of the day, he helped me tremendously, and he still helps me to this day because he's my chairman again. Thankfully, I got him back. But I guess Adrian and I believed. We believed, and I think that's belief is a really important part of business success. If you believe, I believed in the business, and we believed in what we were doing. And Adrian reinforced to me that what I was doing was the right thing, even though it was bloody hard. And I think when we managed to, I met many international investors to try and come and invest. I couldn't find money. I was walking around Sydney. I'd sold 9 parks. The business would turn around. We were making money. I couldn't find it. Nobody would invest in me. And so that was really hard. And so I got, as I said, Chinese investors. I got Hong Kong investors. I had big funds out of Australia all looking at me. Nobody would invest. And it was really hard. Now people will throw money at me, right? But it's a very, very different game. The industry wasn't institutionalised. Our industry was still a cottage industry of mum and dads back then, whereas now it's an institutional grade investment. And now I've got the largest second largest superannuation fund in Australia is my largest shareholder. So that shows you the institutionalisation of what we've done. But back then it was really about working the relationship with potential investors and eventually Sun Super, which is Australian Retirement Trust, who's my major shareholder now, Sun Super, which was quite a small superannuation fund back then. They only had about 25, sounds like a lot of money, $25 billion under management. Now they're 280 billion, the merged group. But back there they were a small super fund, and they believed and they invested. They bought 27% of the company in 2010. And that was like, wow. And that was like a relief.
I'm out.
And that was like, wow, we're stable.
Yeah.
Because we weren't stable. It was about getting stability in the balance sheet. The operations had turned around. We'd developed systems that we could start looking out the front window rather than looking out the back window, rear vision mirror. And we ended up being in a position where there was actually stability in the organisation, and got in some further private equity money that also came in along Sun Super.
Yep.
And we lived again, and we went through another growth phase. So
it's legitimately 2 years that you went through that. It's taking me off to the Steve Jobs address that he did to the college, and where he says you need to love what you do. Were you loving what you did at the time? Is that what got you through? Or
yeah, look, I'm incredibly passionate about the business, and I think I have been passionate about what we're doing from day one. And I think that, the big thing that changed during those dark days was that we switched from a company focusing on the property to a company focusing on the customer.
Yeah,
and that's really I realised we had too much green grass.
Yep.
And not enough water parks and jumping pillows and playgrounds, and we call it pester power. You get the kids hooked up, and the kids bring the parents back. And holiday 100%. Parks were Besser block, old school ablution blocks. And that is exactly what we bought back in 2004-05 through that phase. And we still buy old Besser block stuff now that we upgrade, right? But the whole flavour of the investment changed from, being a pure, okay, we're going to roll up the properties and, try and do an IPO, to, okay, we need to be a sustainable business that actually has, long-term customers, repeat customers, and therefore we need to actually drive the customer experience, whether it be the physical customer experience or, we started working on our digital assets as well and started developing a brand. We had no brand. I mean, we were nothing back then. So it was all about starting to invest into, the business as opposed to the property.
Just on the brand, what you got Discovery Parks, G'day Group, why not just all under the same?
Well, good question. So Discovery Parks is our balance sheet. So we own 87 parks, got 2,500 staff across the country, and there's about $1.5 billion of property in the business. So it's a big property business.
Huge.
And so Discovery is our balance sheet.
Parks,
and so we can control the customer experience in a Discovery Park.
Yep.
Alongside of that, we've got G'day Parks, and the G'day Parks group is a licensee network, so it's a franchise network.
Yep.
And so we can't actually control the customer experience because they're owned by individual mum and dads around Australia.
But you can set expectations.
And they use all of our systems. So the benefit of the network is that we've got a platform which we can leverage. When we operate our parks, we can leverage that platform across a greater number of properties. So we go from 87 to sort of over 300, so 220 odd franchisees or licensees are in that G'day network, and that creates the G'day Parks brand. And the reason why G'day Group is because we've also got something called Wikicamps.
Okay.
And Wikicamps is Australia's number one app in the App Store. Not the number one travel app, which it is the number one travel app, but it's the number one app in the App Store. Wikicamps. So it's the travel companion that you have in your pocket when you go camping around Australia.
Oh, very good.
And it's a community of customers.
Yeah.
Incredibly powerful. And we've got so it's like a bit like a TripAdvisor of the holiday park industry. But not only is it a TripAdvisor, i.e. telling you about what that park's like, it's also got all the points of interest all over the country. So Google doesn't necessarily tell you that, just down the road from this park there'll be a rock which you can go and, climb up and jump into a beautiful lake that's got, a big deep lake.
Yeah, wow.
Right? So there's
the
Wikicamps can tell you.
community,
And the community has published it. So the community say, when you're at that park, make sure you go down the road, find this rock. And that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so that's what keeps people, connected to the properties for longer. We want to make sure we're driving, length of stay. So we're driving, we want people when they go to a park, they stay there longer and they come back. So
I'm downloading that straight away. I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah, no, Wikicamps is a very, very good app. Great thing. So
brilliant.
So G'day Group is, and we've also got things like El Questro. So El Questro, as you mentioned, we haven't rebranded that.
No.
It's an iconic brand in its own right. And so that stands under the umbrella of the G'day Group. But it is a unique brand in its own right, and it's iconic. It's world renowned. I don't know if you've ever been there, but make sure you get there.
I haven't, and
make sure you get there.
I'll hit you up.
Pretty good.
Maybe you can get some discount for me.
One of the most amazing parts of Australia. But so we sort of keep them outside of the overall branding.
Do you ever pinch yourself and just go, "Wow, this is amazing"?
Yeah. Look, I do. I think I forget about how far we've come and how big we are and how amazing the company is, and it is amazing. It is it's a portfolio. So, the great thing about the business is it's got brilliant people. Our staff, they love the business. When you get involved in the business, you fall in love with it. And whether it be directors that fall in love with it, whether it be staff that fall in love with it, finances,
it's getting out
and it's grassroots Australia.
It's your nature. It's within nature, and and it's play, right? It's fun.
Yeah. So look, I do pinch myself, and as I said, I'm turning 50 soon, in August, and I sort of sit there and I go,
raise the bat.
What do I do? And this, I can't see myself doing anything else. I mean, I look at it and I say, well, it's 20 years. We're 20 years this year too. So, and my marriage is 20 years too. So it's been a hell of a journey. But I look at it and think, it's such a great business. It's got all sorts of attributes. It's got we give great experiences to families. The nomads love us when they travel around Australia. Iconic properties like Equestro and Cradle Mountain, and beautiful property down at Kangaroo Island, which we haven't developed yet, which will be amazing. But we own McCracken Golf Club, which we've done nothing with yet, but that's all freehold land that we want to develop into a world-class golf resort down at Victor Harbour.
Stayed there a couple of times.
There's opportunity everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm still really excited about the business. I'm not sitting here after 20 years going, I'm bored and what's next. I look at the business and go, wow, I reckon we've got just so much opportunity. And
do you get out to them much?
Not as much as I used to. In the early days, I spent a lot of time, in cars driving around this massive country, beautiful country that we've got. And
you would have seen so much.
I've seen a lot of Australia, and I feel very fortunate to be able to have done that.
It's one thing that we don't do very often is see our own country. We pick up and go elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've just come back from the Kimberley, for example, Lake Argyle. And, here people are talking about their July school holidays, and they're talking about going to Bali where there's, mosquitoes that have got, it looks like dengue's going pretty rife through Bali. And I sit there and go, why don't you go to the Kimberley? It's absolutely beautiful.
I got to get on that Wikicamps and figure out more about it. That's probably why, because you hear everyone goes to Bali. It's a cheap trip. You can have a couple of dollar beers and all this sort of stuff. And but
my kids, we did the Kimberley for a month as a family in 2000 during COVID in 2021, and I've taken them we've been to the US, we've been to Canada, we've been to Europe as a family, and they still say the best holiday that they've ever had is in the Kimberley, and they say they love the Australian holidays, and we do have a phenomenal country. It's something that
I got to get out and see it more. I want to just jump back to the customer experience stuff that you spoke about. This is a business podcast, so we want to talk a little bit about that. Because we could talk all day about how beautiful the country is, and it just makes me sit here and go, I need to do something about it. So I am going to do something about it, but I want to just cast our mind back to the customer experience. I guess for me, I'm really interested in learning, because you obviously provide an exceptional customer experience now. What does this look like under your leadership, and what principles guide you in this decision-making process? Because it is fundamental to any business to be and understand their customer more than anything else, really.
Yeah, look, it's a good question. I think as we've got bigger, so when you're a small business, a lot of the way that your staff work and a lot of it is sort of a command and control type mentality. As you get larger, I think you've got to realise what decisions are at level versus a regional operations level versus an Adelaide office or CEO decision, right? And obviously 2,500 staff and 87 parks that we own, you can't make all decisions. So I think one of the things that I've been really keen to make sure is we empower our park staff to really understand, so there's guidelines around customer experience that we drive from an Adelaide office perspective.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, our staff who live in these regions, like if you live in the Clare Valley or you live in a region, you know more about that region than what I should know as a CEO.
Absolutely.
And so I want to make sure they're embedded into the community. They're part of the Chamber of Commerce. They're part of the local sports clubs. Yeah. Because that is what the DNA of a community is all about. 100%. And for me, it's about making sure that there is freedom within a framework for our staff to have to do those surprise and delight moments. Yeah. So there's the physical asset, and so the physical asset is stuff that we need to have influence on in the Adelaide office, because that is whether they get a jumping pillow or a water park or a deluxe cabin or a new bitumen road versus one that's got potholes. That's customer experience in a physical sense, and then you've got customer experience from just the way that customers are met and greeted, and how they're advised around the best coffee shop in town versus there's a great trail you need to go walk on, and a lot of that comes down to local knowledge. So for us, it's about making sure that there are guidelines and there are sort of how we think you should be looking at your region, but empowering our park staff, whether it be a grounds person or a cleaner or the park manager, to make sure that if they see a customer and a customer's got a question or they're and that's the great thing about our brand, G'day. I mean, you can go up to anybody. I mean, what a great brand, G'day.
Yeah.
Because all of our Discovery Parks are also part of a G'day network. You can just straight away open it, start a conversation. G'day, in the groundy. G'day, how you going?
Yeah.
It's a friendly environment, and then start that conversation around, what are you doing today? Where are you off to? And where are you going next? Hopefully they're going to somewhere else. Oh yeah, we've got a park there. Go and stop in there and meet John. John's.
And like you said, because they know the community, they know the area.
Absolutely. So customer experience is, and that's the physical, and then obviously they've got the digital piece as well. So digital is massive, and so we spend a lot of money on the digital space. We've in the tens of millions of dollars, so a lot. And it really is around making sure that we are. My vision, we haven't got there. My vision for our digital experience would like to be the Uber of the holiday park industry. When Uber disrupted taxis, people they got into it, they called an Uber, they could track the Uber coming to them when they're sitting in the corner of Perry Street. Then they got in the car, the guy knew exactly where they were going to go because the trip planner went into their Google Maps. They dropped them off in their place wherever they want. They didn't have to pay because obviously they got charged through their digital wallet. But that whole customer experience of an Uber versus a taxi, that disruption was ginormous. And so I think for us, our long-term goal is to really have an incredible digital experience from the moment that you start thinking about going on holiday and you're doing research. I'm doing research. Where do I want to go? So I'm getting the customer reviews through winter camps. Looking at how long I can stay in a region. What are the things I can do? And then once I travel, I've decided to book. So I'm going to make the booking right through to when you check in. My van's a 20-foot van. Your van is only a smaller van. You've got a pop top. I've got a fifth wheel. We've all got different. We all have different types of vans, and so therefore I know that I can't go on that site, or I want to be over by the river or the lake or wherever. So having it's a bit like choosing your own seat in Qantas, right? What do you value when you fly? You probably value the lounge and the fact that you can choose your own seat. And so these are the things that we want to have in our industry, is that we are just the no-brainer. When you want to go on holiday and you want to go to a regional Australia, we are no longer, first of all, holiday parks are no longer a block, and which is the whole industry is improving. It's not just us. But, the industry, if you go into regional Australia, we're better than those 1970 motels. And we are, holiday parks just generally in the industry, we are better than those 1970s hotels. But then once you've decided to go to a holiday park, you know what, a Discovery Park or a G'day Park is where I'm going to stay. So that's the vision for it. We're not there, but that's the vision that we want to go to from a CX perspective. And I think that the customers are, they're everything. And if you can get, if I've got a customer, how do I make that customer, how do I encourage that customer to stay an extra night or, just repeat, otherwise I've got to find a new customer. And it's the simple business, but, loyalty and loyalty programs are also really important, which we've got a really strong loyalty program.
Sounds amazing. Your turnaround actually helped you, or you won an award, didn't it? Right, like you're in a bit of a pickle, need to get out of it. More than a pickle, $200 million pickle, and then need to get out of it. Customer experience strategies, turnaround strategies, investment strategies all come to play, and now you're out and you get recognised with an award that I didn't even know existed, actually, a turnaround award.
There you go.
Talk to us about that.
So it's certainly not an award you want to win twice.
Absolutely.
We were very fortunate. So we were in the bad bank for a few years, and as I said, there was shareholder litigation, and there was a balance sheet restructure. There was also an operational turnaround that we had to do. So there was a lot of complexity in those few years. And when we got out the other side, as I said, my current shareholder bought a chunk in 2010, and by the way, they bought another. Now they own 95% of the business, and they bought most of it in 2014. So 2010 they bought 27, and they bought the rest of it in 2014.
There you go.
So So my chairman and I, I'm the largest sort of individual shareholder. Been good fun. So we won an award. We got nominated for the Turnaround of the Year. So there's it's called the Turnaround Management Association, TMA, and so the Australasian, so all of Australia and Asia, Turnaround of the Year, and very, very privileged to sort of take home the award.
Yeah.
And so
But like you said, that's the last time
I should have brought it in. I should have brought it in with me. Actually,
last time we want to win that one.
It's a trophy. It's a trophy which I'm proud of, but not a trophy I want to win again.
Yeah, 100%. Well done.
But it is. It's satisfying to think that that banks and because it's people that judge it are financial people that have sort of looked at the complexity of what you've done.
Yeah,
and it was complex.
And that I guess leads me to my next question, which is around. It is complex to change and to innovate and continually innovate. And I guess the being the biggest regional provider, and it often comes with the expectation that you are leading in innovation, and hence was what you've sort of said from an Uber type experience. How do you guys go about continually pushing the boundary? What does that whole innovation and change process look like for the G'day Group? And would you say you're mature in your practice?
It's a great question. So with all change, some of it's success, some of it works well, some of it doesn't work so well. So, and we embarked probably in the phase of the business as such that, and I'll just quickly run through it, and then I'll sort of hit the current world. So we bought our biggest competitor in 2016. It was a public company, and it was a hostile takeover listed company, and so that was sort of about integration change, and so that was about.
Can we name the name of that?
Yeah, Aspen.
Yeah.
So they're West Australian. We both started in 2004.
Yeah.
And we acquired their fund, and it was a very hostile public markets. So the Fin Review was writing about us and saying all sorts of things, but it was really exciting.
Yep.
Obviously, I love doing those sorts of things. And that was about integration and how do you integrate a big business. We're a bigger business, but you integrate a big chunk of the properties into ours, and it's become a much bigger business. So that was more about systems and digesting an elephant. That's about sort of how do you digest an elephant.
Yep.
Then probably the next big change for us was we worked out that the online travel agencies were they were owning the customer. So Booking.com and these other groups were really owning the customer. So in 2018 or 17, we bought another company called Top Parks, which is where G'day comes from, which is really about owning the customer right the way through the customer experience. And that probably was where we needed to integrate APIs through our tech platform, through our B2C, so our digital platforms. And it was probably since that time that our complexity has increased tenfold from a digital perspective. So now we have a PMO, a portfolio office that effectively manages our change projects, and they are big. I mean, we spend probably $15 to $20 million a year on change projects, and they are everything from digital pathways, which is about the website, through to even ESG and what we're doing with ESG, through to we've got something called Systematic, which is about. It's a app which people can use on their iPads within park to sort of operate their see risks and see trip hazards and also see maintenance issues. And so the change process that we've got to go through is pretty phenomenal. And as you get bigger, it gets harder.
Yeah,
because you've got a lot of personalities and you've got to move the ship,
Yeah, not to mention customer expectations. Continually. How do you keep up with the market?
Yeah,
right?
we do try and keep it separate. Yeah. So we have BAU, business as usual, and then we have projects.
Yeah,
and we've always been you can't grow and absorb and develop the organisation, I don't think, unless you sort of have a very project-minded philosophy. And we've been fortunate in that we've had support from our shareholders to do that along the way as well, is to make sure that we're thinking about long-term growth.
Yeah.
We're not owned, thankfully, and I've been in, this business has been owned by private equity in the past. I've now got a large superannuation fund who's my major shareholder, and we are we are developing long-term sustainable growth.
Brilliant.
So as a result of that, we can invest in projects, and that does mean about how we continually to improve, and it does all boil down to CX. It's how do we continually improve CX, whether it's Systematic, which is our in-park, how they're managing their business within a park, right through to the digital experience on our app or on our website. So change is hard. We've stuffed things up. I mean, I'm not going to say that
you and everyone else.
Yeah.
We're often called to come in and fix it.
Yeah. I mean, we make mistakes. We started a transition to, we have something called Sprout, which is our website. We moved to a platform, CMS called Kentico.
Yep.
And we've invested quite a few years into that. And now we're changing the complete strategy onto something called Flutter, which is a different type of tech platform from a website perspective. So, and that means we've effectively ripped up a lot of the Kentico work.
Yeah.
So that's hard because you've got people that have invested 2 years of their life.
Yeah.
Because that is their life and they've invested it. And then we're saying, I'm sorry, we're not proceeding with that. We're going to pivot and we're going to do something different. We say in our organisation, aim, fire, adjust. I firmly believe in it, and because you don't always get things right.
No, you don't, and it's funny. There is a real gap in the market right now in regards to change and how businesses view it and how they embark on it. It is, and COVID kind of brought out some of the issues that we can see now. You think about when we rolled out Microsoft Teams, everyone go and work from home and work remote, and we'll roll out Microsoft Teams and everyone just adopted it and it worked. And it worked well because people were actually able to make sense of it, right? This makes sense. I can't do anything else. I need to keep connecting with my peers. We need to keep the business going. So therefore moving online made sense. But what's happened is in that time is that as organizations have changed, they keep, especially the IT in the digital world, they've gone, well, that worked. So let's continue pushing out to see if we can continue managing change the same way. And as you can appreciate, it doesn't work that way when people are able to make sense of it. And these projects would fall over, or like you said, you'd spend 2 years investing, spending money. The amount of times that we've got a call saying, yeah, we're $2 million over budget, Dan, and can you come in and help us and salvage this because we just didn't set it up right from the go. And the gap is that early on in any project life cycle, we have to understand what are the boundaries, what are we doing and what are we not doing, what is the context, how does this connect back into our vision, our strategy, how does this then integrate with the ecosystem in which we're playing, and then what are all the different perspectives. And if we can understand that, then we're more likely to not overspend. We're more likely to not have the increased turnover and the engagement levels dropping of our people, right? Because when your engagement levels of your people drop, then your customer experience is hit harder.
Absolutely.
And so it's all part and parcel of the same model. I'm pretty passionate about this because this is where we work in. But when I asked you that question from a change maturity point of view, I'm interested in understanding is how have you learned from your experiences over the years in order to say, right, we need to invest in our change management and spend some time at the front end really getting this right, dotting our I's, crossing our T's, so that we can actually execute this without going over budget, going over time, and and quality as well.
So look, I think we've done it okay in the past in terms of when we integrated. For example, the Aspen transaction, there was growing pains, but we did it okay. There's certainly some lessons out of it. I think what's happened more so since the tech, the investment now in technology across every business is just ginormous.
Yeah.
And I think the amount of change and the problem is we shouldn't be calling it tech, and I've just called it tech. They're business changes, right?
Yeah,
these are business-led initiatives, and the tech is the enabler.
Correct.
And I think
because it affects everyone. Right?
Absolutely. And I think where we went when we actually, so my tech team 5 years ago was 3 people, right? And so I now have 100.
Yeah, wow.
And so I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But anyway,
it shows you where your investment is, right?
Yeah, it does. But I think it's interesting in that we probably didn't set it up the right way when we started growing from 3. And I think what you've got to do, you've got to truly invest in a PMO. From our perspective, we didn't start with a PMO, and projects were done ad hoc. With sort of leaders, my exec were supporting and sponsoring the projects, but they were done and led, probably not driven from a leadership perspective. That's probably driven by middle management. Middle management's great, but that sponsorship at the we call it the C-suite, but at that chief level,
the driver level
is fundamental. So, and look, I was in a meeting yesterday, just like you just said. I was in a meeting yesterday, and a project that we're working on, has blown out by probably another 850 grand.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money. And it's hard. And so, and we unpacked it. I said, well, because it's a cross-functional team. There's my commercial marketing team that's sort of they're the customer.
Yep.
And then there's the which is the digital team as well. And then there's the technology team. And you just try and unpack. So where did we go wrong? Was it in the instructions? Did we not give a good enough brief? Or is the work that's been done just not good enough? The brief was really, really solid. And it was really interesting in that there was fundamental change. There was fundamental errors everywhere in this project now, where the brief probably wasn't as good as it should have been. Then I think the feedback that I got yesterday was probably what they documented the end state, but they probably didn't document the current state and how do you get to the end state.
Yep.
So they said, this is what it needs to look like. There it is. That's what we've got to go build. And so then they went and built this thing. Where they got caught up is they didn't know enough about where they were going from to. They knew the end state, but they didn't know how to get there.
Correct.
And I think that's a really challenging issue in tech, in the technology space, is that there's, as an organisation, we're only 20 years old. Imagine if you've got a 50-year-old company. There's a legacy of
100%
issues in there, and people have left.
Yeah.
The person who put that system in is long retired or whatever, or she's long retired. So the challenge is how do you actually really think about going from here to here, not just saying that's the end state.
Correct. So if you think about, sorry, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, so I love this subject. So if you think about, there's essentially 4 stages to change, right? This is the creation of changes, which is, this is what we need to do, this is the return on investment we want to get, this is what it means for our customer, so this is part of our strategy, yada, 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 right? Then the next part is the enablement stage, which is often the part that's skipped. And this is the part that you've just said, that you go, this is what we want to do, and we're going to go straight to manage stage. We know, like using tech as an example, we've used Salesforce before, we've used Microsoft before, Dynamics, or just using a CRM as an example. So we jump the enable space because we've done this before, people get it, CRM makes sense, let's go on. And we try to get to the sustainability stage, which is BAU. But we've skipped the stage. It's the old, if you fail to plan, you've planned to fail, so to speak. And that's where I guess where most businesses go wrong, because it is in that space where you can dot the I's and cross the T's, and like we said earlier, we can help the organisation make sense of what we're trying to do first, and that's where you talk about your brief, and then actually build a roadmap for execution in that part, and this is how we're going to execute it on. So that's the area where we find most businesses go wrong and fail, and that's where we believe the investment, if you can get that part right, execution starts to run. We've been almost touted as change insurance, right? Our job is to save you the $850,000 just by doing that planning phase for you up front.
And it is really interesting. And again, we were talking about it yesterday. So, we build a lot of things, as in cabins and water parks and things like that. And we do that pretty well.
Yeah.
And so the issue that you sort of got to reflect on is say, okay, well, these are CapEx projects, and a tech project is still a CapEx project.
Yep.
And so the issue is somebody will estimate that cabin's worth, $250,000, and they're going to put pipes and power and whatever, and therefore the budget is blah. And and then somebody knows what they're doing, and then somebody goes and executes that. The challenge with a tech project or a Adelaide office project, we don't call ourselves a head office. We're a support office. We're a support office. Very keen to make sure we're not regarded as a head office.
As HQ.
Yep. And it is about, for me, it's like, why can't we break it down? And I think it's the planning. I think it's the planning phase is where we've certainly gone wrong. That estimator, the guy who's sort of thought about the bricks and the pipes and the power and to get that cabin in, I'm not sure whether we're doing enough work in our projects, in our sort of initiatives, our Adelaide office projects, because they're generally, business initiatives, which have been sort of dragging us down.
It's not just you.
No, I know. It really is frustrating because it's as a CEO, I sort of sit there and I'm passionate, obviously, about making change, and
Yeah.
and the team works really hard, and you got to win. I mean, one of the problems I find is sometimes these teams are having loss after loss after loss, and motivation gets hard. So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
like, with a project that's going south, how do you turn it around, and how do you get motivation to your people?
Correct.
That's 8 hours a day. That's what they're doing. They're coming in and they're thinking full time about this initiative, and then it doesn't go. And then how do you then start celebrating some small wins? Okay, we've done it. We've done that little bit. Let's celebrate. Let's make sure we, I don't know, do something.
Yeah,
right?
correct. Yeah.
Go and have a, I don't know, have an early day, or
It's
go
the-
and have
it's the
get some
recognition.
cupcakes in
Yeah,
for the
correct.
office or something. I know they're just minor issues, but it's about how do you motivate when something's going wrong or going bad, as in a project, and that it's how do you turn it around.
Yeah, it's the recognition that you want to give us a call.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we better get you down for a chat sooner rather than later.
We'll have a chat. I am interested though in because you talked about the role of a CEO, and you're right, you are interested in change and all that. Leading through change is something that in which not really anyone has really ever prepared for or been taught how to do, right? Like, because you can be a great leader and you can empower people and you can set vision and strategy and you can build a team that can actually do it. But to lead through change is one that is absolutely always with the goalposts shifting all the time, is one that's difficult and one that you learn over time. What have you learned about leading through change? What have you learned, and how has your philosophy evolved over the years?
Well, what I have learned is that it's never easy.
Yeah.
And it's, certainly having the business objective very clear up front. Whether how you get there is the change, that's the challenge.
Yeah.
But having the business objective known up front, be very clearly articulated, and everybody sort of signed up to is really, really important. I think one of the challenges that we have is that there are people within teams in our world where I'm not sure if it's fully clear in their mind what they're doing to contribute to that business objective. So they may be doing something very small within a process or in a tech team, for example, but they're not aware that what they're doing is actually trying to drive, increase, digital sales by, $30 million. And so it's actually,
what's the benefit?
What is the true benefit? And then actually having a business purpose as opposed to a widget purpose.
Yep.
Right. And so my purpose is I've got to develop this widget or this tablet on whatever it is so that's what I've got to do. But okay, as a result of that, that's going to deliver this. And I think being very clear on the business objectives is probably an area where we probably haven't embraced the education of our staff as well as we could have in the past. And I think that's a really important aspect. And I think the other thing is knowledge and acknowledging early when you need to change or we need to stop. We've just ripped up an initiative that's again gone on for a couple of years, a different one. So we have made mistakes, a few of them, and the challenge is when you've acknowledged it, just don't continue. Have the courage to stand up, as in because they're a lot of these people that are my subordinates, the people that are in the teams know before I know. And my view is I don't want to be managed. I'd rather an honest response or an honest feedback about how a project's tracking or whether a project actually is going to deliver the value, rather than continuing through the process and finishing it and then going, it doesn't really do what we wanted to do anyway. Yeah. Right. And so that's probably an issue. But leading through change, you've got to be supportive, but you've got to be firm as well. I mean, I'm happy if we make mistakes. I just don't want to make them twice. Yeah. Right. So can't keep banging your head against the wall. That's right. And so we do talk about aim, fire, adjust quite a lot. Yeah. So we're always willing to have a go. We're an entrepreneurial business. So being a founder-led organisation, we're an entrepreneurial organisation. So we are willing to take calculated risks and sensible risks, but you got to know when you got to pivot and either stop it or change direction. And nothing we do, we're going to blow the company up with. So we don't do silly risks, but we it's actually part of our success. Yeah, but if every project's going over budget by 100
100 grand a year or 100 grand or 200 grand, you do 10 of those projects and you've just lost a couple of $1 million bucks, right? And that can be invested into a piece of tech that actually works.
Yeah. I think the other part of it though is also work out what, and you're one of those. Work out what can be outsourced. I think the other part is people want to build their own teams, and I think you actually can get a lot better value and quicker value with really good talent if you probably outsource it.
Yeah, correct. Well, I mean, companies like us, this is all we do.
Yeah.
We just do change. We put all of our time, effort, research, development, everything into how do we help organizations make sense of change and set them up for success on their journey. And to your point, would you want to do all your own logistics, or would you outsource it?
I think there's a component of what you do. So there are areas of the business which you want to control.
Correct.
And they probably are things really related to CX, and so you really want to own that piece.
Absolutely.
But it's how you get there. And I think that's...
I guess my question was more around, you don't run and manage your own logistics.
No.
You outsource your logistics,
absolutely.
Right? And so you have the same mentality when trying to buy in expertise, right? It's because it's like, this isn't a lifelong thing. We need someone to come in, just deliver it for us, and then it's no different to your logistics. Come in, deliver, move out. So,
Agreed. Yeah.
Right. I am conscious of time. I had a few more questions for you. Maybe I can sneak one in because I wanted to really ask this one. You have shown a tremendous amount of grit and resilience over your career. There's probably an element of post-traumatic stress when we were going through the 2008 saga and 2007 and 8 saga and up until 2010. I am really interested in your advice that you could possibly give to business leaders out there who are sort of traveling through that crisis themselves. How do you suggest that they lean into that discomfort?
Well, first bit of advice is make sure you've got somebody to talk to through it. And so, as I said, I had an ex-colleague and who sort of was almost like my personal financial advisor, as in a corporate finance advisor. Through, and that was, I was lucky to have that relationship. But he wasn't involved in the business, but he could give me very objective advice. So I think get somebody that you can talk to and have objective feedback around what you're trying to do.
Take the emotion out of it.
Take the emotion out of it because it's draining. And so that's probably the strongest thing I would say is and I'm not suggesting go and talk to a psychologist or anything like that. You want a business person that you can talk to that has experience in working through those challenges. So,
but if you need a psychologist,
I'm not. I shouldn't have said that. But you know what I mean. It was more about make sure somebody can just put up maybe it is a psychologist, because that's probably what Marcus did for me. He put the mirror up and just asked me questions, and he helped me all the way through.
Well, I think you're right. It's just finding someone, it doesn't matter who it is, to actually just ask objective questions that you can start solving the problems with. Because when you're in the state of flux, it's tough. I've been there. I know you've absolutely been there. So it's tough to get out of. And I'm like you. I have to talk my way out of things, like in the sense of I can't just sit there and write and think my way out of it. I need to understand and talk and share and hear stories. I think the other thing that happens is self-doubt. You start doubting your own capability and your own, am I good enough? So and in terms of I'm not the right leader.
Am I not the right leader? And I think. And that, to be honest, that happens even as the company gets bigger for me. We're a large organisation. Every now and then I go, God, surely the next guy's going to do a better job than me. And the challenge is the next person won't be a founder, and therefore won't be a founder. It's not a founder-led led culture within the organisation. I think which is fundamental to who we are. So
what does that mean, founder-led?
I think it's very different too, and we talk about it a lot as with my chair. About founder-led organisations, and there's actually a heap of research about founder-led organisations.
I am one. Right?
And it's a very, very different way that nobody will love this business, your business, as much as you love it. So nobody will love this business as much as I love it. So the benefit that shareholders get, stakeholders get, with you being a founder-led business, a founder-led person in this organisation is your staff. The passion that you talk about your organisation, and the passion and that you talk about with your customers, not just your staff. It's all just embedded in everything you do. And for me, being that passion is really, really important to how I do it. I do inductions. I still induct physically in our office people that come through, and they walk out of their induction and they go, wow, that was inspiring. That was amazing in terms of just listening to where the company's come from, our values. They can hear the grit. I mean, life is tough. Life is hard. Life is tough. And we're not for everybody. Right? If you don't want to come and work for Discovery, if you want to work in a different type of organisation, we are not for you. Yeah. If you want to do great work and you want to do cutting edge work where we are, Australia's leader and do stuff that nobody's ever done before, and it's really exciting, great work, then come work with us. Yeah, because it's going to be a great journey.
I mean, it sounds exciting, but you want to. It sounds like high performance culture, right? Like,
massively high performance culture. Yeah. Yeah,
and that's not for everyone. Some people just want to jump in and cruise. And
I say that to people. Yeah, I say, look, you make up your mind. Even in the induction, even though they've been employed, I'll say, well, you make up your mind as well as you work through this. And if you want to go, that's fine. Businesses grow. I mean, the same thing that happens. I've read there's some really good different not novels, but books that I've read about businesses growing and outgrowing individuals. Yeah, right? And at the end of the day, you've done great work. You are, the next phase of this. What
got us here won't get us there.
The next phase of the business, so we'll still celebrate everything you've done and everything you've achieved. But, maybe where the business is going, you can go and do great work elsewhere. Yeah. They're hard conversations to have, right?
Very difficult. The founder-led thing, I often misinterpret how long things can take, right? Because someone might say, I might say, hey, can we do this? And I go, we'll have it ready in a couple of weeks or a week or two. I'm like, what do you mean? There's 24 hours in a day, right?
Absolutely.
We can't have that expectation on our staff, right?
Completely, yeah.
And do you ever get tripped up in that space?
All the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, yeah.
It's, because we don't actually switch off.
No, my family.
But we can't.
Our jokes about, I've got two wives. I'm married. I'm married to
the job.
I'm married to Discovery and the G'day Group, and I'm also married to my wife. She jokes about it. So, but because I do, I think about the business a lot. I think my people a lot. I travel. A big chunk of my life is the business. Yeah, and I love it, and I wouldn't want to do. Where I am today, I'm very happy to do that. Maybe when 20 years time, I'll be happy to do something else. But this is my passion. Yeah, and I'm lucky. I mean, a lot of people hate their job. Yeah, hate going to work, and I've worked for difficult people. I've worked for complete difficult people. I say the wrong word. Yeah, and hopefully that people feel as though they can come to our business and one. We're a good place to work, but you do work hard, but you do great work.
Yeah.
And so
that's great.
It's a high performance.
Closing thoughts before I jump into some quick fire questions. If you had to encapsulate your entire journey into one single lesson, what would it be?
Oh, wow. I think unpredictability is, we're a very predictable business in terms of our cash flows, but in terms of business in general, it's, life is unpredictable, and if I look at our 20 years, I would have never have envisaged the 20 years that I've gone on, and that goes from the joys of the success to the challenges and the dark days of the bad bank and other periods during the history of the organisation. But it's incredibly rewarding and personally rewarding seeing my staff have wins and seeing the joys of when they can actually use our parks as family holidays and so I'm not really sure if I'm answering your question, but I think it's being a leader in a business for a long period of time. I think if you're a leader, if you're a CEO for an organisation for say 5 years or something, 3 to 5 years, not just that's a short time, but it's probably going to be a relatively consistent 5 years, probably, right? Over a 20-year period, I think there's so many ups and downs and moments in your time as a leader that there's constant change. Yeah, and change is you're a manager of change, and I think change is something that you just have to go through all the time. Yeah, and
adapt to it, right?
And adapt to it. And I think the other thing is it's not easy. I think you got to. I said it already, but the harder you work, the luckier you get. It's bloody hard work. It's a lot of fun, though. It's very rewarding. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I could have been an investment banker. I could be a caravan park guy, and I'm really glad I'm a caravan park guy.
I read I read lots, and there's a book. It's called A Road Less Travelled by Scott Peck, and the first sentence in the book is "Life is hard," and the moment that we realise that life is hard, life becomes easier. Right? Yeah. I think it just in its own right sense says this is going to be right. Like this is going to be tough, and like if you set that as your actual foundation and standard, then your expectations are that it's going to be harder, therefore makes it easier, right? Because if you expect everything is smooth sailing, then you're going to be constantly disappointed because life throws you curveballes, right?
Which is going to be interesting for the millennials coming through. 100%.
Yeah, we talked about that in a previous conversation, grit resilience, which is why I wanted to bring that one up.
Yeah.
Jumping into quick fire questions, what are you reading right now?
I'm reading the All Blacks book, Legacy.
Oh, yeah? They're good?
It's a great book.
Yeah.
It's about leadership, but it's a really good book.
I'm obsessed with it.
The All Blacks are the most successful sporting team ever in the world.
I get chills
won something
every
like
time
75% of their games.
It's unbelievable.
They've won. So it talks about behaviours, really. And so that's what's...
and this core belief, like you can just see it, this core belief and patriotism into what, like it's...
Yeah. So it's a good one.
Is there a self-development book that you believe that stands out from the crowd? One that you might have gifted to someone before or recommended before?
Well, actually, the Legacy book was gifted to me, which was interesting. So that's why I'm reading it now. But another one that it's an unusual one, but it's something that's I think it's quite simple for people because not everybody likes to read.
No.
It's called Atomic Habits when it's all about small changes.
James Clear.
Small changes, right? And I think it's just chipping away and not trying to I'm going to, lose 20 kilograms today. And then they lose 20 kilograms and they put it all back on. What are small changes you can make in your life to have big impacts?
Yeah. The one thing I took away from that book was the habit stacking.
Yeah.
So you try to stack on, in the morning, if you want to get up, you do 10 push-ups, then you make your bed, then you have a shower, and you stack your habits together, and then you're more likely to keep them, which I found was interesting. I don't know. I don't do the push-ups, but
I think it's a good one. But it's an interesting.
Yeah, it is a great read. What's one lesson that's taken you the longest to learn?
The one lesson's taken me longest to learn, probably that my wife was always right. There you go. She's always right.
Yeah, mine is always right too. That's strange.
Yeah. I've learned that lesson now.
If you could have coffee with one historical or current figure, who would it be?
Probably there's a couple. Probably Barack Obama, or which is a dark one, which would be Adolf Hitler. Only because I think he'd be an interesting guy to he's complete.
You're not the first person to say that.
Yeah, complete nutter.
Yeah.
But I'd like to just beat him and see what he's got to say.
What's going on in that brain?
Yeah, I know.
You can act and...
Yeah. But it's not somebody that I necessarily recommend we all want to talk to, but I think he obviously, nobody really knows what he was like.
Yeah.
Other than he was a crazy man, but anyway.
Interesting. What is some of the best advice you've ever received?
Probably came out of my Stanford course, which was about leadership.
Yeah.
And leadership is not... I was always thinking about leadership being about me, and what I walked away from after I came back from Stanford was leadership is actually about the people around you and how do you make them great leaders. Mm-hmm. And so...
It's a service leadership.
And it really changed the way I think about myself being a leader because I thought it was about me. And there wasn't enough investment in the people around me. So,
what's one habit, whilst we're on the topic of atomic habits, what's one habit that holds you back the most?
A habit that holds me back? Probably detail. It's not a habit necessarily, but I think if I think about the business, because I'm the founder of the business and I've bought all the parks, I know a lot. And so one of the challenges I think is I've got to rather than jumping to the solution, I've got to actually sort of step back and the detail I know, not talk about it and let other people solve it. So it's not really a habit, but it's probably something that I'm very conscious that I have to do in meetings I need to actually let other people solve problems rather than myself jumping in with the answer.
Getting caught in the weeds.
Yeah. Sometimes I get too detailed.
I hear you. What's your biggest pet peeve? What's one thing that pisses you off the most?
Probably laziness.
Excuses.
Excuses. I'm a firm believer is you work hard and you get reward. So anyway.
No, we'll leave it there. If you could pay someone to do one of your chores, what chore would it be? Not mowing the lawns.
No, I don't mind mowing the lawns. It's probably ironing my work shirt. Yeah. I think I've done a right job today.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I'm with you on that too. What's one word you absolutely hate?
Can't.
Yeah, no such word.
No such word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one thing my parents drummed into me from a young age. There is no such word as can't.
Yeah.
And it's one thing I tell my kids, and I hope they tell their kids, because you're right.
Yeah.
What's the first thing you would do if you became invisible?
I reckon I'd go, as long as it was going to come back, because I'm too old for this, but I'd like to jump into a spaceship, go up with them and come back down with them.
Yeah.
Because then you get to see you get to go, because I'm never going to go on a spaceship again. So, ever, because if I was invisible, somehow jump into a spaceship, go for a ride and come back down.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't be set up with the right gear.
No, maybe that wouldn't. I did think about whether walking through the halls of the White House would be another pretty cool.
That would be interesting.
So imagine just going and listening to meetings. Like if you're invisible, you could just go into a meeting.
Into that top secret
and
room.
just listen to stuff that's going on in the White House. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. What's the most useless talent that you have?
I can juggle. There you go. I can juggle.
How many?
I can juggle 4.
4?
There you go. Yep. I learned as a student when I was at uni.
So good.
Useless habit.
I've got to 3.
Yeah,
Can't do the 4.
Yeah. I did it actually at Till Flat. So up in my happy place, I was a young fella. We had the little balls, those soft balls.
Yeah.
And
so good.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So you're the clown at the party. Is that?
Yeah.
So my favourite question of the whole podcast is, what's your best dad joke?
Well, I thought maybe the best dad jokes should have something to do with camping in it.
Yeah. Done.
So why did the robot go camping?
Why did the robot go camping?
Because he wanted to charge his batteries. There you go.
Well done.
That's pretty bad, isn't it?
Well, it's supposed to be. It's a dad joke.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you for your time today, Grant. I was very, very excited to have you on the show. I really, I can't speak enough, I guess, of everyone in the community about what you and the team at the G'day Group and Discovery Parks and Wikicamp and everything. I mean, you are recharging people's batteries. You are creating memories for people, I think, which is the one thing that really sort of resonates with me with the most, is that, and your thought process on family and how much that means to you is exactly what you're doing for everyone else, right? Like you're giving them opportunity to spend with their family. So I just want to say, keep it up to you and the team. I'm really excited about watching you guys continue to grow and the offerings and that are coming our way. So on behalf of everyone across Australia, I would say thank you for all that you do.
Beautiful. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
No worries.
Good to be part of it.
Thanks, everyone. We will catch you next time. Thanks for listening to the podcast all. You can check out the show notes if there was anything of interest to you, and find out more about us at SynergyIQ.com.au. I am going to ask, though, if you did like the podcast, it would absolutely mean the world to me if you could subscribe, rate, and review. And if you didn't like it, that's all right too. There's no need to do anything. Take care, guys. All the best.